Greetings, all you maniacs, minds with crimes, and welcome back to another What If Warframe rework. Today on the docket is Volt, a frame that I think definitely deserves way better than he got because he kind of got the short end of the stick. Because there's a lot of other games where there's, characters that can control electricity, and they are ridiculously powerful. I'm thinking of like Li Lao, if I'm even saying that name properly, from Gunfire Reborn. He controls electricity, and he is what Volt should be. Anyway, we're going to be going over the What If rework that I have written down, and I'll be discussing, each of my points throughout, as per usual. And I would like to know you guys' thoughts on this. So, everything about Volt has changed. Anyway, let's begin. So his passive is now kills fill a meter. Meter fuels fourth ability. The more meter, the more overshields and passive non-combining shock damage from abilities and weapons. So essentially what that means is when his meter is getting filled up through kills, either by him or his teammates, which means it's going to fill pretty fast, unless it's like 1% per kill. It'd probably have to be less than that to make it really slow. Either way, it would not take long, just like Baruch's 4 would not take long, does not take long to get active. Same thing with this new Volt, this What If. Anyway, so the non-combining shock, that is very important because it will mean that, let's say you're doing corrosive damage on an enemy. The shock is not going to go into that corrosive damage and deal more corrosive. Instead, you're going to have an additional shock proc. So essentially what's happening is you have your main elements on your gun, but shock is just added onto it as a secondary thing instead of it adding into elements that it actually combines into. So that might, some people be like, why did you choose that? Well, because this new rework for Volt that I'm thinking of, he's going to be discharging so much electricity, and it's very thematic for him. And by the way, this shock damage, once we go through the abilities, you're going to probably start to see that I'm thinking of making Volt a absolute powerhouse, and shock damage needs a lot of itself to be very, very potent, unless you're fighting robots or whatever. Anyway, so his first ability isn't too different, so I'm just going to read it off. Arc of electricity that stuns and deals damage. So, very similar so far. However, reduces enemy armor and shields by half for 10 seconds. Stun is for half a debuff duration. So basically, you're cutting the enemy's defenses in half, no matter what those defenses are. Shield, armor, doesn't matter. So you can kind of think of it as a really nice little debuff tool. And of course it would arc to multiple enemies. But if you spam it, you're not going to completely strip enemy armor or shields. It's one instance, and once that instance is there, then the enemies are debuffed for 10 seconds. So overall, I think that adds a little bit of utility. It's not like a crazy amount, but also you have to keep in mind that this would probably stay the subsumed ability. So there's that. So his second is completely different. No more speed because I think it's absolutely pointless. Launch a concentrated ball of electricity that ignores 40% of an enemy's defenses, dealing direct damage. So what that means is it's essentially doing true damage. Now 40% of what? Their total health or whatever? Yes. That sounds insane. So keep in mind that there are abilities in the game, like Excalibur's 4, that do true damage on finishers. So keep that in mind if you say that this is a bit OP. It's not. There are also other abilities in the game that do true damage. All of that. Anyway, explodes on command by holding 2, or hits something like a wall, enemy, etc. So you can launch this thing and then hold 2 and then make it explode. And obviously when it explodes, it's going to deal a great bit of damage. Now, does the ball itself hitting the enemy actually do the 40% of enemy's health? I think what it would more likely be, I should have written this down, but just thinking about it, it would be more like a fast-moving, enemy-piercing projectile that does a small bit of damage, but when it explodes, it deals the majority of the damage it's going to be doing, like the rest of like the 80% of the damage. So think of it like a grenade. So that's pretty cool, right? His third, yeah, I completely removed that too. It's a protective shield around Volt that reduces damage by up to 90%. Up to 90%, meaning you need a certain amount of power strength to have it be 90%. Say 145 power strength, just like Nezha. Anyway, yeah, Volt needs defense. He needs defense, and he doesn't really have defense right now. You could say, oh, but, you know, discharge with the augment. He gets a shit ton of overshields. It's fine. Yeah, but at the same time, this is how I've always viewed his shield. I've always wanted it to be, you know, you can cast the ability and have it surround him. No more of this really weird shield. So I think that's a fair trade-off. You're no longer going to have the ultra defense of that shield, but at the same time, has it ever really mattered? Some people might be saying, oh, but Eidolons. Who really cares about Eidolons? It's such a small group of people. And besides, does it really matter? No, because, you know, the Orphix things exist and they're more fun anyway. That's just my personal opinion. I'm trying to make Volt better overall, not, you know, keep him very niche like he usually is. So now we're moving on to his fourth ability, which there's a lot to it. It changes a lot. No longer is it just a weak-ass discharge. It's kind of a gross name, discharge. Yeesh. Anyway, once meter is 70% full or more, activate for the following. There's a lot. Passively generate massive bolts of electricity. Let me turn this. Electricity, which, by the way, the passive bolts have a range of 20 meters. So you're already seeing that there's some Gunfire Reborn sprinkled in here with this 4, and I'm not even done yet. Scales with enemy level for damage. So the most important thing in my mind when it comes to abilities, especially Warframes that rely on abilities, do this ability scale. We see this with Vauban's Flechette Orb. That thing is an absolute demon. That thing will rip everything to shreds very quickly. You know, there's a few other abilities I'm not remembering, but I'm using, you know, Vauban as an example. His abilities scale very well. So would Volt's. And remember, this is just the beginning of it. Bolts arc up to 5 enemies and are produced every 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, there's just a random bolt of electricity that goes in a random direction and just zaps some fools. Up to 5. It would cap out at 5. I don't think it'd be fair to have it any more than that because this is probably going to be utter deletion, and we're not even all the way through his 4 yet. Now here's where it's getting a little crazy. Crits with weapons have a 30% chance to make more bolts. So basically what that means, let's say you're using a rifle or whatever, you crit 30% of the time. When you crit that enemy, off of the enemy, say 2 bolts are produced that go in random directions attacking random enemies. So you're effectively supercharging your weapon. Now you might be thinking, holy mother of God, what if you use something like the Amprix or the Primary Vermisplicer? Exactly, there's going to be bolts of electricity all over the goddamn place, and it is going to be glorious if this is actually how Volt will be reworked, which he won't be reworked this way. I want him to, though. Not even done. So his other abilities get buffs. His first ability now sets enemies on fire. This has always pissed me off about Volt. Electricity, okay? Stay with me. Here's some science. Electricity is the flow of electrons that is ripping apart the air to make ionized air. That's plasma. Plasma is hot as balls. When electricity hits something, it usually sets it on fire. Think of a bolt of electricity hitting a tree. That tree is toast. Why? Because that bolt of lightning is like the temperature of the surface of the sun, or even higher. It's insane amounts of heat. So his one would literally be setting enemies on fire. You might be thinking, doesn't that mean 100% armor strip? I think it does. And also enemies would be set on fire. So that's great. Second ability, now an explosion pulls nearby enemies into a central point. Trapped enemies take 100% more damage from Volt himself and 50% more damage from teammates. That sounds insane, doesn't it? So you can see also his you press 4 again to deactivate the ability whenever you want, or it will go away once you run out of meter. You can clearly see the direction I'm going on with Volt. Just like Li Lao from, I'm going to keep calling him Li Lao, the Thundercat from Gunfire Reborn. Once everything is set up, he is a walking nuke of electricity. Everything within his range is toast. Very fast. That's how Volt should be. He shouldn't be this, oh, he does a weak little put of electricity. Oh, he speeds up a little bit. Oh, he has electric shield that you can only use secondaries for some freaking reason. It gives more crit damage. And his 4 is lame. No. He's old. I understand. He is a really old frame. Like, how actually old is Volt? I want to say 2014, 2015. I want to say somewhere around there. He's ancient. He's fucking ancient. So, if Volt gets reworked the way I want him to, or he's basically the Warframe's equivalent of that Thundercat, Li Lao, from Gunfire Reborn, I'll be a very happy man. But even if he's not reworked in that way, if, say for example, they don't do the whole, like, his 4 just turns him into a lightning demon, any kind of rework to him would be welcomed, but I hope it's a good one, like I've said, because Volt honestly deserves it. Conceptually wise, I love lightning powers. I think it's some of the coolest like superpower you can have because of the versatility of electricity. Thinking like way back, I haven't seen it in a while, but the Static Shock cartoon, by the way, if you have not seen the Static Shock cartoon on Warner Brothers, that one from the 90s, you are seriously freaking missing out. My God, it was a wonderful show. But thinking of what he was capable of doing with electricity, that amount of versatility, Volt does not have that. He doesn't. He's niche, and it's super unfortunate because Volt is cool, conceptually wise. He controls lightning. He controls electricity. He's a walking Tesla coil on roids, but he's not what he should be. And this rework this rework that I've written, I believe that this is what Volt should be. He should be an absolute, unparalleled DPS lightning god. And before they are stupidly lazy and do this kind of kit on a new Warframe. DE, don't fucking do that. Volt should be the one with the electricity. By the way, speaking of elements, I think the next frame I might do a what if rework for is Frost. Because he's old as shit too, and he definitely deserves a way better than he already has. In terms of other reworks, Hydroid is definitely on my list. I just don't have Hydroid for this, so I would have. It'd be inconsistent because I wouldn't have a custom frame showing in the background while I'm talking. I don't have Hydroid Prime. And I'm not spending the plat to get him because I know. So that's a bit unfortunate. Anyway, I think I did already talk about like some what if rework ideas for him. But anyway, that's Volt's what if rework. Hopefully something like this does in fact happen to him because he deserves it. He deserves way better than he got because he's in desperate need of it. Actually, I don't want to say desperate need because he still functions. He's still pretty fun. It's just he's disappointing to play. He's just a little disappointing. It's like getting really hyped up for a new game, but then it's not nowhere near as fun or engaging as you thought it would be. Or all the hype around it has sort of soiled you and you've seen some footage of it and you're not that interested in it. Elden Ring for me. So yeah, either way, hope you enjoyed this and thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, in Trilby, we trust.